Greetings and howdy howdy from a cooler than usual Virginia. Last night I had the pleasure of participating in a exclusive members only event for a program I'm in that's called Defeat Diabetes Australia. You might ask why I'm an exclusive member in an Australian diabetes program and I don't have diabetes. Never had diabetes. Not even type 2 or pre-diabetic at the moment. Well, that's because a lot of the information I learned in order to start a low-carb, healthy fat way of eating 2 years ago came when I found a YouTube channel called Low Carb Down Under. After watching them for about a year, I thought I would really like to support these people. And then eventually I found a Patreon link. So I signed up for a membership level, not the lowest, not the highest, but a recurring monthly gift, because I figure if these doctors and medical professionals from Australia are putting this information out, helping people all over the world, I wanted to be part of that. I was kind of hoping that somewhere along the line they would have an in-person event again, and I could get to meet some of these doctors, and maybe if I donated a little bit, I'd be in some kind of a special invitation-only dinner or something. That has not happened yet. Of course, the pandemic is still raging in parts of the world. Maybe in my part of the world, I'm not sure. I don't watch the news a whole lot. But anyway, I think the first month I donated, later that month I got an email saying that one of the doctors that helped found Low Carb Down Under, his name is Dr. Peter, I'm not sure how to say the last name, but Bruckner, I think is what it is. At one point, he was the physician for the national cricket team. So he has a lot of experience with getting top-level athletes at their weight that they need to be competitive in professional sports. Another sports physician that I really like from that group is Dr. Paul Mason. If I could meet him, that would be like a dream come true. But I would want to be in a little bit better level of fitness. I don't want to say shape, because round is a shape, not the shape I want to be in. But I would rather be a little more fit, because a lot of these doctors from down there are actually semi-fit. Dr. Mason is one of them. And he had metabolic syndrome at one point in time. I've got my handy drink because the allergies have been horrible here. So anyway, back to how I'm part of Defeat Diabetes in Australia. They offered a 1-year free membership to, I guess, all the Patreon supporters. I think it was like a $99 a year membership fee that they waived because I was a contributing member of the Patreon group. And that is one thing I'm considering for a membership program on my channel. We can talk about that later. But I was glad to join. I was going to supplement my Verta education with it and supplement my class that I took with Dr. Eric Westman. Actually, I think Dr. Eric Westman is the pioneer in this field, and then Dr. Finney, who started Verta, is also a pioneer. And so the guys in Australia base a lot of what they talk about off of Dr. Finney and probably Dr. Westman without knowing it, because he's more humble and kind of behind the scenes. He's got a very good channel. That's called Adapt Your Life. That's the channel that Dr. Westman group runs. Then, of course, the Verta Health channel. That's Verta, V-I-R-T-A. But anyway, last night they were having a exclusive members-only Facebook Live presentation from the nutritionist down there with the Defeat Diabetes program. So it's a broadcast from Australia, I think at about 12:30 on the eastern side of Australia, which equates to 11:30 p.m. here was the start time. At first, I wasn't real sure about this nutritionist because I didn't know who she was, but over a couple of these programs, I think they're doing about one a month. And no, I haven't talked about many of them in the past because they didn't hit me quite like this one did. But I found out it was time to make a pivot, an adjustment to what I was doing, and to some extent what I've been sharing with y'all about how you should do a low carb, how I think you should do a low carb, healthy, fat way of eating. I don't believe I've done or said anything wrong up to this point. I think, but there comes a time when you've healed enough, you can adjust, and you get more knowledge. You can adjust your path to better fit your goals. So let me give you a little background. I have always said fat to satiety. You know, don't eat or keep your carbs low. Let me even back up a little further. What I think, my definition, according to Virta Health, Dr. Westman is even a little bit stricter, but let's go with the Virta Health since I've been doing them most of the time. That is no more than 30 grams of carbs per day, and only certain carbs at that. You know, a very ketogenic type diet, and I adapt that to carnivore-ish, I guess. And I guess I've heard over and over and over ever since I started to prioritize protein. But then you get some crazy internet keto thrown in and you start to prioritize fat. I've often heard Dr. Westman say, we don't count calories, but calories count. And at the beginning, that doesn't really matter. But once you lose sufficient weight that your body is now fat adapted, which means you're burning fat instead of carbohydrates as your main source of fuel, then does it really make sense to continue adding all that high level of fat into your body? And I heard this many times too, but the light bulb didn't go on until last night. I know I've personally heard Dr. Westman say it, that if you add food through your mouth, then your body has to burn that before it burns any stored fat. So ultimately, my primary goal of going along this way of eating, even though I didn't really know it at the time, was to reverse my metabolic syndrome. My public answer was always to lose weight. They kind of go hand in hand, and they definitely work together. Once you lose weight, you know, because obesity is one of the 5 factors in diagnosing metabolic syndrome. If you aren't obese anymore, then there's only 4 factors left to get under control. I guess that's 4, not that. But 4 factors to get under control. And a lot of the other ones kind of fall into place automatically once you are no longer obese. I was no longer obese about a year ago, and that's when I kind of started wavering. So officially, I'm not. I'm not medically diagnosed with metabolic syndrome, which probably also means I don't have insulin sensitivity at this point. Or insulin resistance. Those two also kind of go hand in hand, even though they're 2 separate diagnoses. You'll have to go back and watch some of the older videos too. I did one on metabolic syndrome. There's 5 factors, and you need to have at least 3 of them. Right off the top of my head, I remember that girth at your waist for a man, if it's over 40 inches, obesity, and I know those are 2 of them. I'd have to look up the other 3. High triglycerides, low HDL are 2 other ones that I had. So just high triglycerides, low HDL, and central adiposity is the term they use. More weight around your waist, and being obese is 1. So I think that's 2. Central adiposity is defined in a male as being having a circumference of more than 40 inches at your waist. Then obesity is based on the BMI scale. So if you're over 30 on the BMI, you're obese. I was like a 30.9 when I started. My HDL has come up. My triglycerides have gone down when I concentrate on getting them down. The last month or so, when I've been on the road, when I've been moving, when I've been eating more carbs, they tend to raise your triglycerides and lower your HDL. So I haven't had a lipid panel in quite a while, but the last time I did, everything was moving in the right direction. And it will be moving in the right direction again by the time I get around to getting another one. So what was the epiphany that I had during this Zoom? No, it wasn't Zoom, it was Facebook Live. So because we were members, we had an opportunity to ask questions in the Facebook group once they announced the meeting, which was like 2 or 3 days ago. My question was something along the lines of, is there such a thing as too much fat intake on this way of eating? And then I think I rephrased it in a form that said something like, can you eat too much fat, or is fat an issue? And I'm talking about dietary intake of fat. And Nicole Moore is the dietitian's name, and she's got all these letters. I think one of them stands for Australian. Maybe it's some licensing board there, the ASPD or something. I don't remember. I need to move that coaster over a little closer. How do you like my beach scene? Maybe next week I'll tell you where I got it from or why it's up there. Like I said, no, I didn't say, because I wasn't going to start out with that. It is rather cool here for the East Coast, the Mid-Atlantic. About 63, 64 today. A light, constant rain with thunderstorms and flash flood warnings for this evening. So that's why the video is from indoors today. I'm not sitting out in the rain, the gloom, to make a video. But anyway, let's get back to the question. Nicole, they actually took my question and said it was representative of many questions that had been asked. And basically what she said was, basically as your health changes, your fat intake should also change. So how did that relate to me? She being a nutritionist, or what we might call in this country as a dietitian, even though they have 2 different legal definitions. A lot of us think dietitians are nutritionists and vice versa. Anyway, we would go to one or both or either for nutritional advice in this country. So she has lots of patients / clients that may or may not be in this program. She said, well, I would start somebody with fat to satiety. And she made a great, and I'd heard this before, a comment called Binge better. She said, I have people that are saying they've cut out all the carbs, they've cut out all the sugar, but they're really craving chocolate or they're really craving ice cream. So she says, my advice on that is to binge better. Said if you have to eat the whole dark chocolate bar, then go ahead and eat it. That's better than eating a whole bag of M&Ms or cookies or potato chips. Or, get a keto ice cream instead of and I'm not sure, I probably would not recommend that. But if you want to spend the money on that upgraded ice cream that's called keto friendly, just make sure it is before you eat it. But as Dr. Westman often says, is you crave what you eat. So if you're going to cheat, then you're going to crave what you ate. But if you don't, if you're stick to the plan, then you will start craving what you're eating, which will be better stuff. So let me get back to the answer to the question. When you first want to improve your way of eating by using the low carb healthy fat diet. And you may have heard it called the low carb high fat diet. And I think that's what it was in my head when I started, but I have switched over to healthy fat. Then you think you're supposed to eat all this fat and very few carbs. And that's okay when you're starting, because the fat helps reduce the craving for the sugar if you're always full and satiated, which also means satisfied. But as you get fat adapted and your body starts burning the fat instead of the carbs, and hopefully you're not cheating and eating a lot of carbs along the way, then you don't necessarily need all the fat down the road, especially if your weight has plateaued or you've started gaining weight again, which is sort of kind of the situation I'm in. It has nothing to do with eating too much fat. It has everything to do with snacking too much. But of course, my response was to clamp down and go back to exactly what I had been doing when it worked, which would have been low carb, high fat. But my gears started turning, and I thought, well, it makes total sense now that if you're putting in too much fat, you're not going to lose weight, because fat doesn't make you fat, but it can keep you from losing fat if you're putting too much in. And even with her caution, she said, you're still going to eat like 60% fat. You cannot cut out all the fat, but she said you could go to skinless, boneless chicken breast instead of skin on, bone in chicken thighs if you want to still have a lot of protein but reduce the amount of fat. You can go to sirloin instead of ribeyes. Ooh, that almost makes me cringe. It did make me cringe. I love ribeyes, but they are the fattiest cut of meat, and that's why I've been eating them. Although I haven't eaten a whole lot since I got here. They're much harder to find here, much more expensive. But I've been sharing all my good finds with my verticoach, because when I first got here, I got eggs for 66 cents a dozen. And now, almost when I first got here, I found a different store. The eggs were at Aldi's. But there's a O International Market. And that's just like it sounds like you're saying O, O-H, apostrophe, International Market. Between here and my parents' house, like the next little town up, a couple exits once I get on the interstate, that sells 85% ground beef for $1.99 a pound. I've seen it as high as $2.59 a pound there. But the 73% that I was eating in Fort Worth at Aldi is $3.99 a pound here at Aldi, and that's the cheapest I've seen it anywhere. So I started buying the 85% because of cost. And I was telling my verticoach I would rather have 73%, but then after this video last night, I had to write her a message back and say, oops, well, maybe the 85% is what I need, a little lower fat content, and I maybe should get some chicken breast. But now that I've learned this, and now that I'm fat adapted, and now that I'm healthy, I think my next step is to lower the amount of fat that I'm bringing in on a daily basis. Not going to a low-fat diet by any means, you know. If you're still prioritizing protein, which has got to become my rallying cry, prioritize protein, then you're always going to have in excess of 50% fat. Meat protein anyway. If you do plant protein, probably not, but you can do this as a vegan and only on plant protein. You'd have to figure out how, because a carnivore can't tell you how to eat plants successfully. I let what I eat the plants and convert them for me. But if you don't eat what I eat and you eat what I eat eats, then you would have to figure it out on your own. But it is possible to do a low-carb, healthy-fat diet on just plant-based products. So let's see how it goes. My prediction is that if I do it right and I do it regularly, that you will see this chin starting to not have so much padding on it, and these jowls will quickly disappear. Because I think it'll be a very quick transition once of course I've got stuff here that seems to always be the problem. You always have stuff. Even though I just moved, I've been restocking. And a lot of it is just as fatty as what I had in Texas. Actually, most of my hamburger is that 85%, so that's 12% less, so I'll just start with that. And then I found at a store we don't have much of in Texas, if we have it at all now, Food Line, I found this weird, interesting type of bacon. I'd bought some at Aldi in the past. It's kind of the ends and miscuts and stuff. They had a 2-pound package at Food Line. I've been cooking it up the last few days. It's very thick chunks of mostly meat, so I'm hoping maybe it's a little bit lower on the fat content, even though the fat it grilled on bacon is what is absolutely amazing taste-wise. So I'm having to adapt that a little bit. I don't know if that's fattier or leaner, but I think I'll buy more because it's a whole lot cheaper than the fancy bacon, the regular sliced bacon. Even though they do have that fairly frequently for $4.99 a pound over at the Safeway. So I have no shortage of grocery stores here. Of course, you might expect that less than an hour out of the nation's capital. But anyway, if you have gotten healthier as you watched me, and if you're kind of at a plateau, you might want to reduce your fat intake a bit. But stick with the healthy fats. Don't go back to the seed oils. Stay with butter. Stay with lard. Tallow, if you can find it. I've never had much luck at finding tallow. Coconut oil. And for low heat or cold stuff, olive oil. You probably don't want to use butter or olive oil in high heat cooking because its smoke point is too low and it can oxidize extremely quickly at those high heat points. Thank you so much. Welcome my new subscriber. I hope I get some new ones at that little button right over there, I think. Hit that. I would love to have you with me for the ride. Let's go get healthy. Love you. Bye-bye.